Alhamdulillah, wa rabbil alameen, as-salatu salam ala rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Halim wa salim bikum. Thank you, my dear brothers and sisters who will show up here in the future on the second part series of the Black Man and the Family. And last week I covered a topic concerning the Black man who sleeps white. And I gave a lot of statistical information about this issue. And this second part here deals with a very complex and very heated and very misunderstood relationship between the Black man and the African Arab. One may say, well, Yahya, why you want to talk about this? Because there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation being passed out on both sides. And there's a lot of heated debate. There's allegations being slung by both groups against one another. We have programs on TV where even, I say my people per se, from America in particular, and some from Europe, are slinging mud towards the Arabs. And we have Arabs who also have joined in the fray by doing certain things as well. And so I wanted to tackle this issue not from some emotional standpoint about an incident that happened in so-and-so in LA or something like this, or some racist comments being generated by both groups. And I wanted to use this. I want to use intelligence to discuss this. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother Abudi. And I wanted to discuss this because this is an important issue, because there's a lot of information that both don't know about one another, and especially the African American in particular. His knowledge of the quote unquote Arab is practically almost zero. All he knows is what he sees in the liquor stores in his neighborhood, or in the convenience stores in his neighborhood, or what he sees at the masjid. He doesn't understand the evolution about the man that he has now hated, or he does not understand why this man hates him, and vice versa. We have African Arabs don't understand the Black man because he doesn't understand why he hates him, or why he denounces him, why he considers him not African. So we have all of these dynamics that come into play here. And this issue is very complex, and it has to be looked at in the proper context. And the first thing that I want to talk about is what we have to look at the definition. What is actually an Arab? Is the Arab from the color? Or is it only from color and language? Is this where the person lives? All these questions are obscure to most people, even some Arabs who don't even understand exactly who they are. And so where did the Arabs come from? See, these are issues too. Where is their home base? Is it in India? Is it in Egypt? Is it in France? Where is their home base? Where is their genesis? And so then we look at the other thing here. What is the difference between the Afro Arab and the Toubab Arab? Toubab Arab we call white Arab. I'm using the Toubab, the Mendi Mandinka term to describe white people. Okay, in my language of my heritage, the Mende, Mandinka, they use this term. So again, those who the first time have to understand that we're using a term that is a part of a language. It's not derogatory. It doesn't mean any harsh rhetoric or slang names, anything like that. So is there a difference between the African Arab and the Toubab Arab? We have to ask that question. And first off, again, most of us don't understand what this actually entails. Is there racism and prejudice even between the Arabs? This is another question too you have to look and ponder. Is there racism between the Arabs themselves? The short answer to this real quickly is yes. So let's tackle this now. I'll start going into this. The Arab is actually a person, and again, let's be honest here. There's a lot of misinformation about being Arab, a lot of misinformation, and a lot of this information is not right. And even many of the scientists have discovered cannot come to a consensus themselves. Some say that the African Arab is a person who's partially Black and have African descent, or he's wholly African, but speaks the Arabic language. And this is what is interesting. The populations included in African Arab is from Morocco. If you look at a map, down through Mauritania, up across North Africa, all the way to Egypt, also into Yemen, and then Saudi Arabia, and then Oman. This is what they call the belt of the Afro Arab belt, because the people have significant amount of African blood in them. Irrespective if they recognize that or not, many do recognize that, and many will tell you straight out, yeah, hey, look, I know I'm this, I'm that, and so forth and so on, especially here in Morocco. You rarely ever find someone will come to tell you, I don't have no blood from Black Africa. That you don't hear that here at all. Even the lightest skinned Moroccans will tell you, yes, I have Black heritage. That is a given. They know that's it's commonplace. And so the Arab that we see here, we know he's a mixture. And in the mix is also Jewish. That's right. Jews have mixed considerably in North Africa in particular. And we can say that here, especially in Morocco as well, and Algeria. We know that they've mixed. And what is interesting about this is most North Africans, especially Moroccans, they can't say they are 100% African Arab. They cannot, because they have Tuareg involved. They have the Jewish element, and they have the European element from the Romans, and also later migrations from the French, the Spanish, and some English. So they're mixed, similar to that, like African Americans. So the African Arab is a person who's partially or full African, but speaks Arabic language. Other scientists have said that the person is classified as this is when his native language, his first language spoken, is Arabic. Then at this time, he is classified as an Arab. Now, let's look at the Toubab Arab for a minute here. Salam alaikum, my dear sister Abina. The Toubab Arab is ranging from, again, now, this is from Palestine. You look at this going north through Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, into Iraq. This is the belt where we would classify them as Toubab Arab. And unfortunately, the situation that we see today, some of the major problems is because of this belt, this Toubab belt here, Toubab Arab belt, that has caused a lot of problems, where even they themselves discriminate against Saudis and Omanis and against Yemenis. And when they come to the United States, we know that they discriminate against Black folk there. And so we have that dynamic as well. But they are Arabs. Nobody has a real definite answer to where they originally came from. Nobody. We know one thing is that they arrived from the north. We know that. We know that they arrived from the north. And we have on hieroglyphics murals where the pharaohs had drawn pictures of people who have come into the region. And there's one in particular I saw that was very interesting. He showed soldiers and mercenaries who were under his employment. And one was jet black in color. One was like a African American in his color, because the African American is not generally very, very black. They're in between black and light brown. They're in between those colors. And then there was one that was very white. So this is interesting. We know here that the black man and the relationship of the African Arab in particular goes way back, well before the birth of Isa, Jesus, alayhi salatu wasalam. We know that. We know this relationship. And it's an interesting relationship because why? When they say these interlopers begin to come back, now let's go back into history. I'm gonna lay out some facts about this. Because in order for us to get to where we are today, we have to go back to the past. And what the problem that we have on many talk shows, we have a lot of heated arguments and debate about what is happening today. Nobody talks about what happened 1,800 years ago or 2,000 or 3,500 years ago. Nobody talks about that. They only concentrate on incidents that happened between a white Arab and a black man. And they concentrate on that, and that's it. And then you hear a lot of allegations slung back and forth, and it gets nowhere. When in fact, as I said before, even the so-called Toubab Arab has maybe some significant African blood as well. And this is evident by Al-Jahiz, which I'll talk about him and his explorations when he talked in the 8th century. He found some things that is very significant, even though the people were whitish in color, but the parts, the genitalia of the woman was dark, not like that of the Toubab woman from Europe. That's right. And this is a significance of showing African heritage. Why Subhanahu wa ta'ala made it this way, we do not know. None of us know. That's the undercover. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the woman this way. We don't know why, but we know the African heritage. We know that the distinguishing factor for that of a woman is not on her hair, not her eye color, not the thickness of her lips or her nose or her ears, but it's by her parts, my brothers and sisters. And this is a scientific fact. And you look at a Lebanese woman and she could be white, but when she's examined, she's not like the European woman. That's right. So I'm giving those facts for you to research. It's a very interesting phenomenon. And like I say, it goes deep into a lot of sciences and so forth and so on. So we know that the African Arab and the black man have had relationships before the beginning of, before Jesus alayhi salatu wasalam was even created. And we know that we'll look at the historical background behind this. We know that the prototype Arab came. We don't know where he came from. We don't know if he came from Iraq or Iran as we know today, and he came into Saudi Arabia, and this is what started it. We're not sure. But we also know that there was that prototype Arabic was spoken, but it's not Arabic as we understand it today. It was a different sort of Arabic being spoken. Some say it was even different. And we know this by documents and things we found in the Arabian desert. We also found that black folk have been living there well before anyone else got there. This is where we have the sticking point. And you have my brothers from the Arabian Peninsula and from North Africa will be in denial of that. But we have scientific proof showing that the black man was there already. And you have to ask the question too, how is it that they were already speaking certain languages that related and they were not colonized? Remember, they were not colonized at this time by any quote unquote white Arab. They're already speaking a prototype Arabic. There are and Geese from Habasha, the region of Habasha, meaning Ethiopia. That's part of this Afro-Asiatic languages. They're all similar. And we have a large portion of black population that speak this language. Let's go back even further. Let's look at this even deeper. Let's look at the Quran, the beautiful Quran, what I follow. Subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this in a language in the Quranic Arabic, which was different than most of the Arabic being spoken. We know this to be the fact because the Prophet ﷺ sent some of his most learned companions to the desert to understand this language better. Who did he send it to? Did he send it to the Toubab Arab? No, he sent it to the black Bedouin Arab tribes who've been sitting in the Arabian Peninsula since the time immemorial. This is a fact, my brothers and sisters. That's right. This is why I'm giving you this now, because on these talk shows, you don't get any of this. All you get is the white Arab, he did this. The white Arab said that. He did this to me in the store. He said this to me. And we don't hear anything about how this relationship blossomed, how this relationship fell, and so forth. I will cover this in two parts because it's that important. Because we have two people who are related and they don't like each other. And this is not right. And I'm going to try to bridge the gap on the part of my people, the black folks, okay? But I have to be honest here, my brothers and sisters, as well. Even I and African Americans, you better go check your DNA. I have enough Arabic blood in me as well. How did I get this? Stretching from Morocco all the way to Messer, Arabic, Egypt, Alexandria. My heritage stretches from Rabat. If you look at a map, Rabat all the way down, stretch all the way to Agadir. If you see a map, that's where my DNA is found. On my mother's side, stretching all the way across Algeria, through Tunis, through Libya, and into Egypt. So me, I'm a mixed up African, basically. I mean, I'm Mendi, I have Mendinka, and my mother's DNA is originated out of South Africa, which is a rare DNA. I'm related to the late Mandela. I'm related to him. He had the same genotype as I have. And I'm also related to that famous actress, I can't think of her name, that comes from there. She has the same genotype as me. So I'm all mixed up. I mean, I have everything that's run through Africa. My mother's DNA stretched all the way from South Africa all the way to Morocco. I mean, it's fascinating. So I just wanted to give that backdrop. So I want to clear up some matters here, hoping that I can educate my people in particular, and some of the Arabs too, who understand English, because I may have to do something this maybe in Arabic. I'm not sure. I got to think about that if it's going to be fruitful or not. But I want to clear this up. I'm not trying to defend anybody. I'm not trying to say one is right and the other one is wrong, because both are right and both are wrong. Bottom line, both are right and both are wrong. And this situation has to be cleared up. And that's why I'm talking about that. Now, we talked about the language and we talked about the Afro-Asiatic languages. I have to school my brothers and sisters, especially I heard some last night on a talk show talking, which was absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. The languages have been proven. Sheikh Diab, Rahimahullah, who was a famous scientist, talks about languages. He classifies Sumerian, Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, Ge'ez. Hiyar. Now, Hiyar is an old, you never heard of this. This is a very old prototype Arabic that was spoken in the Arabian Peninsula. That's right. And another one called Safiatic. This is another one that are very, very close to the modern day Arabic. Okay. And so all of those are classified as Afro-Asiatic languages. Our famous Sheikh Diab from Senegal talked about this. That's right, my brothers and sisters. This is a fact. So now we're starting to see a pattern here. I'm giving you a backdrop. We got the people coming from the north. They settled into the Arabian Peninsula. There were black folk in the desert, Bedouin, already there. Those Bedouin helped to keep those new arrivals alive. This is akin to what happened like in the Americas when the Europeans came. And remember, the Americans celebrate Thanksgiving. The Indians helped them to survive. The black folk there, the Bedouins at that time, helped those people to survive. And intermixing began to happen. And that intermixing brought a new prototype, Arab. And and those who came from the north were definitely light-skinned, no doubt about that. And we also know by scientists have said that the Arabs are basically the fathers of the Europeans, because as Europe opened up, okay, from the Ice Age and whatnot, they began to trek across the West and they became Europeans. We have read this, we have seen this, we found evidence of that, but we also know that we found evidence that black folk were there as well. So those Arabs who came there most likely were black, as we understand Arabic today, as who's a person is an Arab. And so now we know that the Arab who speaks this language can come in a variety of colors. We know this. We know that he can be black, he can be white. And the definition is not necessarily the color. Don't let racist individuals, black or African Arab, tell you something different and tell you that the white Arab is the true Arab. He is not. And he is not the quote unquote true Arab. He is not, because there's no such thing as a true Arab because of the mixture that happened well before Jesus alayhi salatu wasalam was created, before he was even born. That's right. So this mixing had been going on for thousands and thousands of years. So the Arab was not as you see him today, especially from Lebanon, Syria, and so forth. I'll get into that as well. So we know now, let's look at something. I want to give you another backdrop so that get you to understand something. I heard some stuff last night, and I know there's one brother who has a very strong hatred for Arabs, and he cannot accept anything that you say about them. He just cannot accept that. But we have to explain something. We have an eyewitness who was around at the time. He wrote a book. I put it in the chat. It's called The Glory of the Black Race. And it's a longer title than that, but it's a short title version of that. And and we know also that he talked about our prophet and his family, alayhi salatu wasalam. He did not describe them as white. He described them as black folk. He explained the situation in the 8th century, who the people were at that time. This is an eyewitness account from a black man who wrote this, Al-Jahiz. And he's the one who he was one of the first gynecologists who made this discovery about the genitalia of the woman. Because why? They had slave women who were European and they're black African, and even had some women from India, as we know today, the country India. When he began to examine them like a gynecologist, he found these significant things, and he wrote about that as well. It's very interesting. So Al-Jahiz wrote about that, and he talked about the Bedouin tribes that were in the desert who were coal black in color. And then he talked about how this generation began to evolve and how the racism began to take place. Now, someone says, well, okay, yeah, I hear you. You told me the African Arabs. You said that stretches from Morocco across North Africa into the Arabian Peninsula of Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Oman. He says, but okay, I can maybe accept some of that. But how about these guys who are in Lebanon? How about the guy in Syria? Now, I'll give you vernacular that we say back home, back in the hood. It's about your daddy. Reason why that they look the way they look is because their daddy was Roman. Their daddy for hundreds of years, they were brown and blackish color, but those Romans have been there for thousands and thousands of years, and they mated with the women there until they turned them into a hybrid color of like a creamy white color. This is why they look the way they look, and they begin to marry among themselves, and they kept this color, but their daddy is Roman. See, so this is the difference. Those are stretching from Oman, Saudi Arabia. I'm talking the originals. I'm not talking today, because now there's travel and so forth, and Islam began. There was jihad, and people were going, even coming from Turkey, from Eastern Europe to come into Saudi Arabia. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the original Arabs. Their daddy was not a white man. He was not a Toubab Roman. Their daddies were black people. That's right. That's why we call them African Arabs. And that's why I want you, my black brothers and sisters, to look at this as it really is, regardless if they accept it or not. These people from this region are part of your family tree. They're no different than the African Americans we see there today. I laid a question into the poll here. And I said, what about the African Arab and the black person who marry? Is this miscegenation? Is this miscegenation? And I had one interesting answer here. Our dear brother Bolt said that it's a Toubab construct, a miscegenation. Well, yes, in some ways, but no, because if you look at the legal definition of miscegenation, it's basically, let's be honest, it's when a black person marries someone who's not black. He can be Indian, because the miscegenation laws of the South even covered, he could not marry even the Indian who were, the American Indian. He could not. He couldn't marry Japanese, Chinese, anyone, any worker. He could not marry anybody except only another female slave or another black person. So they classified that. And you remember something, the Toubab American made the classifications. It's him who classified the Ethiopians as Toubab. It's him that classified the Somalis as Toubab, the Eritreans and so forth from the eastern part of that, for that region there, he classified them as Toubab. You look on immigration slips, especially from the 1930s, they were classified as Toubab. Can you believe this? And some of our brothers from that region are 3 times darker than me, but they was classified as Toubab. This is why we have problems and designation of quote unquote the Arabs. These from this region are African, but they are all also African Arab, because they were going back. Colonization was going back and forth. Remember Queen of Sheba? I talked about her. People from Habasha, they go colonize in the Arabian Peninsula. They come over into East Africa and colonize. They've always mixed. So we have variety of mixtures. This is why the people from Habasha, Eritrea, Djibouti, Somaliland, they have a different look about them, is because a lot of them have mixed because of what happened for thousands and thousands of years of mixing of this prototype Arab that originated from the black Bedouin and the light-skinned interlopers who came into that region. They are product of that, but their home base is Africa. We know that, but they are a mixture. That's why they look the way they look. And that's a different story altogether. I'm not here to talk about that. Salam alaikum, my dear sister Amina, because it was a conversation about some of them last night. I looked at some of it, and I was not amused or appeased, and I was kind of disappointed in the program, because it got nothing. It only drummed up racist connotations and so forth and so on, and it was not right. But and they tried to basically say that the people from Somalia are not black people, and I mean, you know, that's I'm sorry, that's laughable. Here they're sitting in Africa, and many of the Somalis are darker than the African Americans. How can the African Americans and some of the European black people be light skinned and they're black, and the ones who are in Somalia and Somaliland are white? Oh, come on. This is why I'm saying, my brothers and sisters, why this type of conversation need to be taught. We need to talk about the history. We need to talk about who these people are before we get on these. You see these talk shows, we have idiots. These people are idiots who are talking. Here you're in Africa, and some of the Somalis are black as the night, and how he called them white. How is that? How is that? He's darker than him. He's got more African. If you look at their DNA is more than most African Americans. So wait a minute here. We go back to the same idiocy that comes from our people. We have maybe African Americans between maybe 70% to about 40% African blood. These people got 80, 90%. So wait a minute, how can we be African and the guy from Somalia and the guy from Habasha and Somaliland and Eritrea be Toubab? And we have African Americans saying that they're not black people when their DNA is more than ours. You understand why I'm talking today? My brothers and sisters, don't listen to that nonsense. I don't care what is being said. And the racism is coming from the mouths of some of our people. It's wrong. You think about the intelligence of this. This DNA is all over the place now. And you Somalis, Ethiopians, all of them have gotten their DNA tested. And you look at, they have more African blood than we do. African Americans, ours only range from 70% to 40%. They're up at 80 or 90%. So they're Africans. So how can you call them, my dear brother who says this, white folks, Toubab? It's wrong. So my brothers and sisters, don't let that sway you when you see these talk shows. You go to the history and look. Stop that. Don't call them Toubab. They're not Toubab. Now, I'm not talking about their attitudes, and so we're not talking about that. We know, I lived in the United States. I know what's happening. I lived in California. We had all of them there. I know what's happening with that. I'm not going to get into that because that's their attitude. Here, I'm talking about scientific facts. Even if they come and say that they're not African, which I never heard not one Somali person ever tell me that. I never heard that. I never heard anybody from Ethiopia tell me something. They'll say, yeah, I'm mixed. Yes, true. Yes, I agree to that. I never heard them say I was Toubab. I never heard that. Eritrea, I never heard that either. But I don't know where this stuff comes from, but maybe some have said this. I don't know. Or maybe they're using the U.S. Census because the U.S. Census classified them as Toubab. And you know why they do that, so they can make a division between us. It's wrong, my brothers and sisters. That's why I'm clearing this up. They're not Toubab. The African Arab are not Toubab. Yes, the ones above there are mixed Toubab. Yes, but those who originally from this region from Saudi Arabia, Oman, Yemen. That's why I classify that region as North Africa, because they're African people, even if they admit it or not, but they are. So I want that understood, my brothers and sisters, because we have to understand this has got to stop. I've looked at enough of these talk shows, and I've looked at many African Americans talk craziness about this issue, and it's wrong, and they have no facts. They only can talk about they're white because what happened to me in Switzerland. They're white because this one said this to me in England. They're white because he mistreated me in my store there. I mean, in the store inside LA. But when I'm sitting there scratching, I'm waiting. I say, okay, you said they're this and that, or give me some scientific facts. They can't. They can only give you emotion. I don't want to do that. I want to bring facts to you here now. Now, let's go to a historical fact about something. Let's bring the Toubab historians into this picture, into the mix here. 440 years before Isa alayhi salatu salam, a great Greek philosopher and historian who was not a racist, he came to this region. He came to Egypt. He went into present-day Ethiopia, which is Somal and Somaliland, and that region. He came there. And he called these people because at the time they had no word for it. The Egyptians, this is 440 years before Jesus was born, alayhi salatu wasalam. He said that they were burnt by the sun. This is in his documents he wrote. Now you see look how many thousands and thousands of years. This Greek historian said this. So they coined the term Ethiop, meaning burnt by the sun. That's not a Toubab. They were burnt black, and he described them. He described the ancient Egyptians with thick lips, thick nose, kinky hair, very, very black skin. He described them in his journal. And let's go across the ocean at the Red Sea here. You see the Red Sea, and then you go into Saudi Arabia. He began to describe them as well. He said that he can see a mixture in the black folk as he started going further north. When he got to Iran, he said the people were still black, but their hair was more wavier. So the genetic drift had began because they went away from the hot African sun and changes happened. And we also know this because we look at all the way across to India, my brothers and sisters. You look at the Andaman Islands, they're black folk. They've been there, and you know the famous story about the Sentinel Islands where they kill anybody who tried to come there. They're black. Black as the night. They've been there since time immemorial. They said that they were one of the first Africans who came across into the subcontinent region, and they're black people. India has always had indigenous black folk there, and they're still there today. They're still there. So think about this, my brothers and sisters. We have been there. This is our area as well. We were there first. All of this, India, stretching across, even China. We have even old photos of ancient Chinese who are hidden from the public, and they are short-statured black folk. We have ancient African people even in Japan. The first samurai of Japan was a black man. The Japanese will tell you that, even the racist one. That's where the samurai designation came from, was from a black man. He has a long name like this. He's the first samurai. He was black. They had a sizable black population in Japan in the 7th and 8th century, my brothers and sisters. That's another story, but I'm trying to show you the significance that black folk have went everywhere, and they have made it everywhere they went, and they've caused the population to change. Even though the racist Toubab historian has tried to say that the only thing we've done was jump out of trees and eat bananas, and that's all we did. We didn't even know how to even farm, or we had to wait for thousands of years before they come into West Africa and East Africa and so forth to show us even how to live. That's nonsense. We have been in these regions from the beginning, even far as Japan. The first samurai was a black man. That's right. And we have well-documented proof of that. Well-documented proof. But they begin to die out because as they begin to mix, black populations are not coming back anymore, and that population began to die out. So I wanted to give you that scientific fact. Now, Herodotus' account is very interesting. Now, here's another account. Then I'll move on from the historical account. Tacitus was a Roman historian. He was present almost to about near 100 years after the quote-unquote death of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. He described the region as fundamentally black. This is 100 years after the passing, according to the Christians, of Isa, Jesus alayhi salatu wasalam. He said the region was fundamentally black. So now, my brothers and sisters, who are the original Arabs? I hope you get the picture now. You are looking at one. They were like us, like me. The original were like this, like me, mixture, because they had mixed. They became mixed and they became a prototype. They were like me, and they became whitened from the Roman blood. but they did not mix well with those of we know the present-day Saudi Arabia, because they came in there and the black Bedouin tribes there were rough. My brothers and sisters, they were rough. So the Romans didn't have their way there. They couldn't have their way there. So they mainly stayed the way they were, black, and they stayed in the desert. And you think about how harsh the Saudi Arabian desert is. You're talking about getting 120, 130, 140 degrees. And Toubab can't stand that. So they had to go try to fight those guys in that type of heat. And you know how the brothers, we're acquainted with the heat. We know the heat. We're accustomed to the heat. They're not. So they did not colonize them. So I just wanted to give you that, again, a backdrop. So we now get the picture here. We know now the real prototype Arab was black. That's why we call them African Arabs. They were more of a mixture like myself and other African Americans. They weren't jet black color, but they were brownish color. But we still have some jet black Arabs still in the desert, and they didn't mix much. And again, as I explained to you, they spoke a prototype Arabic language. So I'm giving you this backdrop so you can get to understand about the significance here and about the people in this region, and to show you that even the Lebanese that are giving you trouble in LA and from their stores, they have African blood in them. But I know you cannot identify with them, because even I would have a hard time identifying with them because of their attitudes. Not all, but I was at the masjid there when I became Muslim. I saw the discrimination. I saw this. I know many African Americans were hurt. I understand that. But we have to put it in this context. Even those people discriminate against other Arabs. So you have to look at it from what it is, my brothers and sisters. And we will also cover here in a later stage, which is important because I know African Americans want to know this. They want to know about the slavery, the black man and the African Arab in slavery. Do you know this is a very tragic part of this relationship between the two, between the black man and the African Arab? It's a very tragic relationship, very, very tragic, because we know that there were 3 stages of this slavery. And that slavery began way before the trans-American slavery occurred. And it lasted, well into the 1800s. Even still today, my brothers and sisters, we have some countries like in Sudan and Mauritania, they still have slaves. This is against Islamic law. I'm not going to debate that now. I just wanted to let you know that slavery still exists and it's wrong. And we also know that slavery is still existing because the Toubab and their conglomerates from from America and from Europe are trafficking our ladies as we speak today out of Africa into Europe and into the Middle East. So the slavery of our people are still going on. It has not stopped, my brothers and sisters. It's a lucrative business. The Arabs were no different than the Toubab who were involved in it. They were no different than the African, our ancestors were involved in it. They saw a commodity, they saw a way to get rich, and they got involved in it. So we cannot say only the Arab was involved. No, he had slavery. Yes, we know that, but it's the head of the story. But we also know the Toubab had his portion of this. We know what he did. He had the most brutal slavery in the world. We understand in the history of the world. The Arabs were involved in slavery. We know that. They cannot say they weren't. They were involved in slavery. We know this. And I'll get into some of those and some of the things that was written. It's very interesting about that, which was quite different than the Toubab slavery that they had of us inside the United States and Europe. Very different. So we know at this point now, my brothers and sisters, we know that the Arabs, as look into the prototype Arab, the prototype Arab that we understand is not the white Arab. Okay, the Toubab Arab. He is not the prototype. The prototype is when you look at some of the original, you see them in Saudi Arabia even today. If Saeed was here, he could probably tell you about some of the original. And in Oman, they are brown-skinned and the original Arabs. Again, our prophet, he sent his companions to the desert, to the Bedouins who were black people, to understand the Quranic Arabic, because the Quranic Arabic is the most difficult of Arabic spoken. That's right, the most difficult Arabic spoken. He sent them to the black tribes. Black folk has been mixing with the light-skinned interlopers who came into that region for, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 years. They've been mixing. It has not stopped. As we speak today, the mixing is still going on. You look here in Morocco, you'll see a very, very dark-skinned black man, Arab, okay? Or you want to call it, because here in Morocco, everybody's mixed. And you'll see a very light-skinned Arab woman, African Arab, and they marry. You see all rainbows of colors. This mixing has not stopped. It has not stopped. And let me give you a statistic too on something which is very interesting. I saw this the other day, and it is very, very puzzling and very troubling. There's a study that was conducted inside the United States, and this is perplexing. And I have to ask the question, what has happened when Arabs, African Arabs, Black Africans, the subcontinent, East Indians, Pakistani, the Asians, the Filipinos, Indonesians, and Asians, other Asians. When they come to the United States, men, when they don't marry their race, guess who they marry? They marry Toubab women. Now let's look at that. I just got through talking last week about the facade of Black men marrying white females and having sexual relations with white females, right? Toubab woman. They're doing the same thing. When they don't marry one of their own, they don't marry another Arab, she's white. He doesn't marry a black girl. He doesn't marry a Hispanic girl, anything like that. No, he marries white. So what is it inside the United States? The minute our brothers leave from Africa and the subcontinent, and they come to the United States and they go to seek the relationship with the Toubab woman. And I had, why is that? I don't know if you guys have answers for it, but I'm curious. Why is that? Why did they seek that out? And let me give you another statistic. Remember, I was telling you last week that the black man, when he marries a Toubab woman, his relationship is short-lived, generally speaking. It's 2 times to 3 times greater than when a Toubab couple marry. When he marries a white girl, a Toubab woman, he's most likely going to end a divorce. The same statistics is for the Arab who married a white, the Asian man, from the subcontinent. They all have this same high ratio of divorce when they marry a Toubab woman. If they married another Indian woman, divorce is much lower. So we had that sexual dynamics as well with our brothers coming from Africa. I'm talking about Nigerians, Ghanaians, Senegalese, and so forth. They come over, okay? And they don't marry another African woman. They marry white girl. Our brothers from Pakistan, India, they come over. They don't marry Indian girl or Pakistani girl, our sisters. They marry Toubab. We have our brothers coming from Indonesia and Philippines and Thailand. They don't marry one of their own. They marry Toubab. And their marriages don't last. They don't last, my brothers and sisters. This is a very interesting statistic. Why is the brother, the melanated man, coming into Africa? Is it the weather that makes him go to the Toubab? Is it the water? What is it? What is it that what makes us change? We leave the subcontinent and we're black as the night. We're from the Madras. Madras are the very, very black Indians. Very, very black. 3 times darker than me. They come over. They marry Toubab. So what is that? I'm asking maybe some of you in the chat, and maybe in the future you guys can put it in the chat or in the comment section. Maybe you can enlighten me, because I'm trying to figure it out myself. Why is that? Why the same thing? The African American man, he marries the white girl, okay, more so than he marries the Hispanic girl and the Asian girl. So we all melanated man are marrying the white girl. When we don't marry our own, we marry the white girl. We marry the Toubab. In America, that is. In America, that is. So I just want to put that out. That's a fascinating thing. Salam, my nephew, how you doing, nephew? And what we got here? Yes, it could be for status. I talked about that last week. If those who wanted to listen to my talk last week, I got into the subjects about why the black man chooses the Toubab woman, and I cleared up a lot of fallacies. And I wanted to make sure that, again, just like this show here I'm doing now, I wanted to clear up a lot of fallacies. And I talked about this relationship between the black man and black woman, and how troubled it is. And I cleared the air about that as well. I talked about the shortcomings of our sisters, but I also talked about the greatness of our sisters as well. In my talk last week about the black man and in his family and the black man who sleep white. So you should review that if you're interested in seeing the dynamics. I didn't talk about some other crazy, emotional stuff. I brought statistics to back up my play on this. And this is the same thing here. I got statistics about this. And we're talking about this issue now. Now, let me get back into this again. Some of the product of the African Arab and the black man or black woman is they produced some of the most interesting people. Al-Jahiz is a product of that. He's mixed with quote unquote Arab blood. Antara is also mixed. You African Americans, I've said this many times, please read about Antara. This brother here was something else. He was there before, he came at the time before 30 years or so. And I think he died before the prophet got his, Prophet Muhammad got his prophethood. But you should read about Antara. This was a very interesting brother, ancestral brother. His strength is legendary. And what he did in battle is legendary. They still talk about that. And his poems, my brothers and sisters, you talking about a poet. Matter of fact, in the Kaaba, at one time, they used to carry, because the Arabs were very fond of prose and poems. You find Antara's poems there. They are beautiful poems, my brothers and sisters, but they're not in English, of course. They're written in a very, very sophisticated Arabic language that they mastered at that time. He was a product of African Arab father and a black African slave woman. And so we had this type of man created. And so we look at something, and I'm going to get into this part and then I'll close because I'm going to go to another part, because I know people they're looking for something, but they want a lot of argument, denouncing. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to present facts here to get you to this point. So we can, because we need to understand the Arab. We need to understand what he is and what he's not. We need to understand that, my brothers and sisters, because it's not fair as you as a black person, because we're the most universal person in this earth. You yourself are the most forgiving person on this earth. Subhanahu wa ta'ala made you that way. But yet you cannot forgive the African Arab. You're forgiving the Toubab, but the African Arab, you hold a special hatred. And I think I understand the psyche behind that, because you know in your heart they're part of you and you don't understand why they treat you this way. I understand that treatment. I was at the masjids there in LA. I know how they were. I saw how they treated me even there. I saw how many of them treated me in the stores. I can recall when I was going to work, I would go sometimes I stopped to go there. I go in there and get a soda or something like this. And they fling the money across the table, and I couldn't understand how they were, and they go and do certain things and say certain things to you, call the police on you when you come out of your store. They say that, and I had that happen before to me as well. I come out of the store, and at the time, I'm not going to talk about my former job, but I come out, and I was dressed very well, and all of a sudden I was met by two Toubab cop, and the guy called the police on me because he said I stole. And it's not the case. But you know what? This is how those relationships happened and why we had this hatred towards them, and it's wrong. Now, let's talk about this factor here about the relationship again about the African Arab and the black man. I'm gonna get you to a stage now. You're gonna want to know. You're gonna say, yeah, okay, I get you now. How did the African Arab get involved and the Toubab Arab get involved in enslaving the black man in this region, stretching mainly from Yemen up north all the way to Iraq, because you find them there. You find slaves there. They enslaved. Here's what happened. Remember, I told you that when the interlopers came, they were light-skinned. No one knows exactly where they came from. There's a lot of speculation. They came from India. They came from other places, and they were lighter-skinned. They were originally black Africans, but after thousands of years of being away from the continent, they've changed. We know genetic drift will do this to you. We know this. And they came back to the region of Saudi Arabia. Then they began to mix with the black Bedouin prototype Arabs who were there. Okay. Now, when they begin to mix, they created, remember I told you, another prototype Arab who was more or less kind of like me, lighter skinned. Okay. He wasn't really black like the original Bedouin. As they begin to mix, they begin to get more powerful. Conflicts begin to happen between the two, and they begin to enslave their African brothers. This is how it began, my brothers and sisters. Now, we're talking about hundreds of years, well before Islam came into the play, into the sixth and 7th century. Well before that, well before that. And these conflicts happen, and when they begin to defeat the black Bedouin tribes, they enslaved them. Some escaped and went further south into Yemen. And then when they begin to go back into the African peninsula, to East Africa. That's why, my brothers and sisters, that's why that today I urge you, black man, especially brothers who are on some of these shows talking heavy against the Arabs, you better look at your DNA. Most of us have Arab blood because we have mixed with them in our ancestry. And I know my dear sister Bina, she's here. She'll tell you her DNA. She's got North African blood. You look at Saeed, if he's here, he's got North African heritage. A lot of African Americans, great majority of us have Arab blood in us. You should be careful when you denounce them because you are them too. You have to be cognizant of that, my brothers and sisters. You do your DNA. You'll be surprised. My sister Abina can tell you, she's got mixture of Arab blood. So, excuse me, my brothers and sisters. I see we have the Toubab sent his filth into the chat room here, pornographic. That's okay. Yeah, we know them. It's all right. Okay. We know that the African Americans have this Arab blood. So this first slavery kind of happened in this regard, where it became vicious. Now you got to remember something as well in this. The East Africans, the Habesha region, there was no such thing as Somaliland and Somal and Eritrea. It was all Kush or Habesha. We call that Arabic. They were going in there colonizing, and they were also taking slaves from there. They were taking Toubab type Arabs, and they were also taking dark-skinned Arabs as well and bringing them back in Habesha as slaves. So we were doing the same thing. The Arabs came and began to raid. When they defeated the brothers, they enslaved them. We've been enslaving each other. That's why I say to you, my brothers and sisters, they get on these talk shows. be very mindful of your facts. We did the same thing to them. It's just that it's not talked about. Why do you have all the mixtures in East Africa with Arab blood? Because we enslaved, we took their women. What do men do when we win a battle? The first thing that goes down as a trophy is the woman, and she's bedded down quickly. We know that. That's the history of man. So we get a Toubab Arab woman. We conquered that region. We brought her into Habasha. She became a housemaid, and she was a bedchamber wench, and she produced children from that relationship. So we did the same things. But the slavery that we had was not in the significance of what our brothers did to us, but that's still head of the story. But I wanted to give you the understanding that the slavery began as the new prototype Arab who's lighter skinned. He's mixed. Okay, we can classify that as like a mulatto, okay? Mulatto, because you have black Bedouin. The mulatto types begin to fight their black-skinned brothers, and they enslaved them. This is how this began. And as they began to take slaves, they begin to take them up into the Toubab Arab region, Lebanon, Syria, this type, and up north to all the way to southern Iran. That's right. So we know this to be the case. So this is how the genesis of that. And there's two other stages after that. I won't get into that today, but I wanted you to get that backdrop so you can start to get the picture on what's happening. Remember, my brothers and sisters, we're not innocent in this either. When they get on the talk shows and talk about the Arab slavery, we enslaved them as well at periods of time when we conquered them, because man has always done that. What man has not done that? On the African continent, when we fought against another group, another ethnic group, even in Africa, we enslaved the people and we made it to women. I mean, this is this man's nature. They do this. You know that. It's no different. And we took Afro Arab slaves and brought her, and we took Toubab Arab slaves as well. That's right, and brought them into Africa. We did this as well. And this type of mixing has been going back and forth, my brothers and sisters, back and forth for so long, 2,000 years. I mean, it's been going on. And as I said to you now, my brothers and sisters in the chat, those coming in the future, go get your DNA, especially you African Americans. You'll find you may have North African blood in your system. And you're Arab. You have Arab blood in you. So you should be very careful when you denounce the Arabs, when you yourself have Arab blood in you. Now, if you reject that, that's on you. But I find that awfully strange for you to denounce yourself when you have Arab blood in your veins. And you African Americans, you have a lot of that. That goes to show you that this mixture had gone on for a long period of time, as I said. So we covered quite a bit on this. And again, I talked about this DNA findings of Black and African Arab. They share the same heritage. It's very interesting. My wife just had hers completed. She found out, we suspect on her mom's side, that she has Nigerian blood. You understand? My wife is from Morocco. Now, she has Nigerian blood. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Most of the Arabs and African Arabs are African. They have DNA from West Africa, East Africa. They are not Toubab. They may have, yes, they have Toubab blood because of the Romans, but their stock is not Toubab. We have to understand that, my brothers and sisters. That's why I put the thing up there. I asked in that poll, is it miscegenation when a Black man, an African American, marries, say, a girl from Egypt? Okay, she's light-skinned. Is that miscegenation? How about our brother from Ghana? He marries a girl from Libya. Is this miscegenation? We have to ask that question. Is that? Or we have an African Arab, light-skinned from Algeria. He turns around and marries a very dark-skinned girl from South Central. He's going to USC there. He's at the college. He marries a very dark-skinned girl. African American. Is this miscegenation? We have to look at that. And I don't know what you guys. I haven't looked really. Most of the people, I think they said. I think they said no. Most of the people said on the poll they said no, and it's correct. I'll give you an example of that. You know, on the plantation, okay, the slave plantation, the Toubab was creating the mulatto, the mulatto, and there was the I forgot. There's three classifications. This the mulatto, and then there was another word start with an M. No, not M. I forgot. Anyway, there was three classifications of mixtures, and octoroon was the one. She was 1/4 white and black. I forgot how it goes. It's a weird mixtures that was happening. When the black man, he could marry her, it was not called miscegenation, the legal term, because why? They have black blood in them. So if you have a light-skinned mulatto or octoroon woman, okay, and you marry her, that's not classified as miscegenation. So how could, when you marry a light-skinned Egyptian girl, how could that be? She's African Arab. She's light-skinned though. It's not miscegenation. And those who said it's not, they're correct. It is not miscegenation because you're marrying within the African race. That's right, my brothers and sisters. So I'm bringing these things out. And how you doing, my brother? Kairaba. My mother is Amazir. Amazir. My father is Black American with ties to the Sangha people. Yes, it's been a lot of fighting and intermixing between the Tuareg and Songhai for centuries. Brothers and sisters, here, our brother here is talking about this issue. The mixing that's gone on between the African Arab and the black man has been going on for so long. But we're being hijacked from stupid, ignorant people on both sides. Especially the Toubab Arab and black folk, especially from America. And you know what's funny about this, my brothers and sisters? With all this said, the marriage between the black man in America and the Arab woman is growing, especially in Europe. There is a lot of that. That's right. They have been married at a fast clip. See, so, and some will say, that's interesting. Well, how could they? They've been doing it 2,500, 3,000 years, my brothers and sisters. It's been going on that long. So we are basically the same people, but we have grown adrift because of culture. And we have differences, yes. But just like we have differences on East Africa, the Kenyans they have some different type of characteristics and cultural things than different than the Ghanaians. But yes, we're African people. Look at the Fula people. They're African, but they hold certain traditions that maybe the person from the Akan people in Ghana, they don't do. But we're both African, you see? So that's why I'm trying to say to you, my brothers and sisters, be mindful of this. I'm giving you this. I want you to check it out. Don't take my word. You do your research. Do your research. Don't listen to the talk shows that are hosted by our people who go cascading and calling Arabs Toubab, meaning that they have no black blood at all. And they're not black people. Don't listen to that. It's wrong. Don't listen to that, my brothers and sisters. I'm not defending what they do. I've said along, we know what many of them are doing. They've discriminated, that they discriminated even against other Arabs as well. So I've given you the definitions so you can understand the African Arab. Where is he from? Morocco, across North Africa. If you see a map, you see Egypt, you see the Red Sea is parting. Then you see Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Oman. This is the African Arab belt because the people are partially African or they're mostly African. That's right. So we need to get that clear. And so be mindful of that, my brothers and sisters, in this. Now, I want to give you another fact here, then I will close. When the Arab became even lighter after centuries of being mixed with Roman blood. Guess what they did? This is very interesting. We have documents, even Al-Jahiz talked about this. And we have also things written in Arabic from other scholars and historians talking about this issue. This is very interesting. Some of the sultans, okay, and some of the ruling class, even though they were very light-skinned, they wanted to mate with very, very dark-skinned Black African women. And they wrote and said that the pleasure that was generated from them was far more than the others that they have under their realm. That's the first fact they said. The second fact was the reason why they mated with them. They chose them. So here's what they would take slave women. They would go and watch her and look at her. They see the strong, very dark African woman. They take her and they mate with her. These are quote unquote Toubab Arabs. Because one of pleasure. Al-Jahiz wrote about this. I can't get into that because it's very sexually charged. I can't do that. I can't talk about what he wrote about this issue. But anyway, the first thing, the sexual pleasure. Second, they realized that when they mated with the Black African woman, they produced sons for battle, right? For war. They found the Black people to be very, very strong. So they realized that when they did mate with them, they were producing now a stronger race of people. Because why? They had Black African slave men, and they saw many how strong and powerful they were, like Antara. If you read about Antara, this man had great, great, great strength. And there's many Africans like this that were living in that region. And Al-Jahiz talked about some of the moving boulders. He talked about, actually, there's some Africans, we don't have their names, and their strength was so great that they some of them had this power to move boulders. Okay, big rocks that are out there in the desert. They moved it. They moved some of these things. The Toubab Arab saw that. Out of this relationship became many sultans who wrote about their Blackness. And they talked about how they were proud because their mothers were Black African slave women. And their fathers were, quote unquote, Toubab Arab men. And they became sultans. And many of them were known for their war tactics. And there's books written about these new prototype Arabs. That's why you see many pictures. You see these guys with thick lips and the nose, and you look at them. You see their hair. Their skin color is a little lighter skinned. And we call them Arab. But their mama was a Black woman. And daddy was a Toubab Arab. This is what I'm talking about, my brothers and sisters. They wrote this. They took the Black woman, one, for pleasure. Secondly, she produced an offspring that was supercharged, if I can say that word. And they knew that they had these sons, they would be good for battle in war. Because remember, in those days, they had hand-to-hand combat, not this foolishness we have today where everything is from the air and from 7, 8, 9, 10 kilometers away. Those days, it was hand-to-hand combat. So they wanted physically superior sons in order to go in battle to defeat the enemy. That's right. So I wanted to give you that significance to show my brothers and sisters that this mixing took on some hilarious kind of connotations too. But you know how men are. Men are this way. They're silly about some things sexual like this. We know this, and the sisters know this, that some men have some, just like we have our fallacies there in the United States too. When we used to call it high bone, when she, not high bone, we call it red bone. When she was very light-skinned, we dreamed up she was this over the dark-skinned girl. Well, this man have always come up with silliness like this, okay? So this is no different. But I wanted to give you that fact. Al-Jahiz wrote about some of the things that these brothers said about why they took African slave women. It's very interesting. And it's not hilarious in a way, but in some ways it's funny because you think about man and how he feels about sexual things. And he wrote about these things. And it's very, very interesting. So I'll look at some of the chat. Yes, our dear sister Amina was talking about the our basis in Islam. There's no superiority of black race over the white. Our prophet made that clear. It's the piety that distinguishes the best of us, is that of faith, not actually the color. She's correct. That's what we talk about, that. And he made sure that he said there's no Arab over any non-Arab. And he said this clearly in his last khutbah, his last speech. And it's true. So Islam, we don't have this. Now you'll say, well, you just told me about Sudan. You just told me about Mauritania. Yes. And Algeria and some other, in Libya. Yes, there's slavery, but it's not according to our principles of the Sharia. They're doing this under the table because most of the places now are not under the Sharia, so they don't enforce that. So they let it go, and people know the slavery exists, and they don't do anything and say nothing about that. And we have, let me see. Oh, how you doing, my brother? Sundata Method. I have it too. Many of us do. I didn't catch what you mean by that. Okay. Let me see here. Who else? My nephew said it could be for status. Again, he said about the status, that why they're choosing these women, why they're choosing the Toubab Woman, and everything. That could be they think it's status, and unfortunately, that is a fallacy that has to be defeated, because we should marry a woman for her virtues and stuff, not have this concept thinking that that a Toubab woman is far superior than a black woman, or a black woman is far superior than a white woman. They all have their attributes. There's no superiority in that, because if this is the case, we have high divorce rates among the black man and the white woman. We have high divorce rates between the Arab, the African Arab, and the white woman. High divorce rates between the Filipino, Asian man, the subcontinent man, with our brothers there coming to America and they married the Toubab woman, it ends up in divorce. So if she's supposed to be so far superior than a melanated woman, then why are these divorces occurring at a large scale? You've got to think about that, my brothers and sisters. There's no superiority of the Toubab woman over no woman, and there's no Filipino woman superior than a black woman, or there's no black woman superior than a Filipino woman. That's a fallacy. That's made up here. It's not. There's no superiority. The best of the women, regardless. We have good women who are Toubab, and we have Toubab women in history too have fathered black children, and they were mothers to kings themselves. So we're not saying all of them are bad. That's not what I mean by here. But we have to ask the question, why are melanated brothers running to America and they go to marry the Toubab woman? We had to ask that question. But I wanted to clear up to tell you that there's no superiority of them over anybody else, any other woman. Okay. So my brothers and sisters, I gave you the first synopsis of this. We're going to start getting to the more heated portions of this here. Inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to talk about, now we'll start going to around the 7th century, the rise of Islam, and how that shaped the relationship between the African Arab and the black man. That relationship became very interesting at that time. And then it soured to the point we have today. So I'm going to bring you some facts that I want you to examine when we look at this issue, and then we look at it again from the scientific standpoint. And we got to remember, my brothers and sisters, again, please do your research. When you get ready to lambast an Arab person, go to your DNA. You better look at it. You African Americans in particular, you better look at your DNA. You may find some mysteries there that's uncovered. You had somebody that's Libyan in your family. Hmm? You may have somebody who's Algerian or Moroccan, Arab, and your family tree. Hmm? So be very mindful of that, my brothers and sisters, when you get ready to denounce them of your hatred towards all Arabs. You have that most likely in your blood. That's right, my brothers and sisters. So be very mindful of that. Do your DNA, get it, and look. Don't be surprised when you see 3%, 4%, 5%, 2% of Arab blood is floating in your veins. I have relatives here in Morocco. I have also Libyan and Egyptian relatives for my DNA. They're in my list. I already have got contact with one of my cousins who's Palestinian, Arab, and he's third cousin to me, and he's light-skinned. That's right, my brothers and sisters. You see how dangerous it is when we talk and we don't even know what our history is. Brothers and sisters of America in particular, we don't know our history. So we have significant amount of this blood running in our vein. So be very careful when you denounce them. You have that running in your blood, especially you African Americans. Our brothers down from West Africa, not so. They don't have that. But the African American, he has that. And I try to figure out what has happened to cause this percentage to go up higher among us. And now I'm thinking that because when they were taken, there was a lot of jihad at the time going, and we know that the West Africans in particular and East Africans, they will go up into the north, and it's always been mixing going on there. They took some of these, and this is why it's quiet kept, even here in Morocco, about slavery. They were taken. We had people taken here because we have a cut in my heritage. We have heritage going. Suddenly it's gone. That means somebody here in my family tree in Morocco was taken, our brothers and sisters. Somebody was taken, and they ended up in America. My wife just had her DNA completed. It showed in the DNA that her mom's genotype is found in the United States. Now, how can that be? How can it be, my brothers and sisters? This is my Moroccan wife. Her mother's DNA, her genotype, is found in the United States among who? Black folk. Among Black folk. And some also Mexicans. That's another thing too. Me too. I have, because my dad's side, the Spanish Portuguese, I have that in me as well. On my dad's side of the line, I have Mexican relatives in LA. I wrote some letters to some, but they never wrote me back, according on my DNA list. But I have that as well. But again, my brothers and sisters, I just wanted to show you just how closely related are to the African Arab, and we should be very mindful of that and be very careful of that in that, in our hatred towards them. We're not talking about the attitudes. We know that the attitudes there in the United States, we understand. And why is it that they change? Why is it that when they come over, that they lose themselves? They begin to marry with white women. We understand that. And they begin to adopt their racism against us. We see that with the subcontinent when they come over, they too. Some of them from the subcontinent are 3 times darker than me. And they'll tell you straight out, I'm white, or I hate you. And they go and align themselves with the Toubab Americans. We see that. We know that. But you got to be very careful, even though when you're upset about that. Be upset because that man is doing that. But don't go after him because he's quote unquote Arab, when you yourself have that in your blood. Okay? So be mindful of that, my brothers and sisters. So my brother here said about, I've seen that there was a man from Egypt who was undoubtedly black, but the U.S. government keeps labeling him as white. Yes, Caucasian. That is very interesting, isn't it? The immigration forms, here we have people that are black as the night. And they come from Africa, from East Africa, And our government, the American government, classified them as Caucasians, as Toubab. And he's got more African DNA than African Americans do. And they call us, you know what they call us, huh? Negroes, okay? You know, the other vernacular. I can't say here on YouTube. And yet he calls our brother, these, our brothers, especially the Nubians and so forth, Habesha and Somal, and they call them Toubab. And they got them. And now some of the Arab politicians and some of the activists, they're trying to get that designation removed because they said, I'm not Caucasian. I'm not a Toubab. They tried to tell them that. But the State Department and whoever made this designation, because it's a racist designation, and they didn't give them any. They said, no, you're white, and this is what you have. And that guy's 3 times darker than me. And he's got more African blood than I do in my veins, and they call him Toubab. And our brother just said it right. They're classified them as Caucasian. It's wild. It's a very, very interesting phenomenon. And it doesn't make sense, my brothers and sisters. It doesn't make sense at all when he calls him a Caucasian. And yet and still he go discriminate against him. If he's supposed to be white, why is he discriminating against the Arab, the quote unquote Toubab Arab? He discriminates against them. We see that. Look what has happened after 9/11, huh? All the Toubab Arabs who were classified as quote unquote Toubab, now they've been discriminated against in stores. They're being classified as terrorists and so on and so on. So if they're supposed to be white like them, why are they going after them? See, you have to understand the mind games of Toubab, like Malcolm said. He knew them very well, and those are mind games, and it's very, very troubling, very, very troubling. Okay, my brothers and sisters, I was long today, and I will finish up on this, and inshallah. You know, I wish, like Sister Amina was talking, we can't see it, but Sheikh can in his computer. Yeah, he's talking about the pornographic stuff that's been sent here. It's really a shame. It's very, very shameful, my brothers and sisters, and we know why they do that. But you know, we understand that, we ignore that because again. These people who do this, they lack the intelligence and the fortitude to come on and to give their take on this. So they come after me with this smut. See, and this is the way they attack me. But they're not man enough, and we call it jubana in Arabic. They're cowards to do this kind of stuff here. By putting porno in a site, on a religious site like this. And people who are talking and they put porno, you know, that shows you what kind of human being these people are. They're the worst of human beings. So, my brothers and sisters, thank you for those who showed up, and I'm hoping those that show up in the future here to look at my program get something out of this. And remember, I'm going to cover the second part of this. We're going to now move to the 7th century, and now we're going to start hitting to other things of questions on what has happened to this relationship between us, the black man, and the African Arab and whatnot. And so we'll get to that, and then hopefully we'll conclude, inshallah. So I'll look at that, how I'm going to do that, what day I'm going to look at it, and try to get that. But it's going to be very shortly, inshallah. I will cover the second part because it's important, my brothers and sisters, and I'll close here, that we be mindful as black folks of our relationships with one another. We try to do the best we can in our relationships with one another. And again, I stress, my brothers and sisters, African Americans and those that live in the Western Hemisphere, be very mindful of what you do. We have an enemy. Yes, we know who the enemy is. Generally, it's the racist Toubab. And we have made enemies of others that we should not make. So be mindful of that. Be very careful of that. And just be forgiving. Yes, it's very difficult sometimes. I understand that we're human beings. I don't like nobody throwing. I give you the money at the table, and this guy who's from Syria, he throws the money across the table as though I'm like a piece of toilet paper or something. You know, I didn't like that either. But we have to be mindful of some people the way they are, and we just look at that and we say, hey man, this guy's bad news. But we don't classify all of them as that. So we be mindful of that. And I'm hoping that I gave you some education to get you to think about this situation. If you look at this other show that happened last night, to me, it was disgraceful. It was disgraceful. I have to say this. It was disgraceful when you talk about the people, Somali people, and so forth and so on. They are brothers. They're African brothers and sisters. Yes, they have Arab blood, but I didn't like the way the program was done. It was not right. And then we call, and some people say they're not black folk. It's ridiculous, as you heard me say. It's off the charts. And DNA doesn't really lie. You know what I mean? So if their DNA shows African, how can they be Toubab? You see what I'm saying, my brothers and sisters? Some of our people also are idiots. And we have to stop this type of thing because it's wrong. And I have to call it out for what it is, because that's the Islamic way. When we have this type of asabiya, as we call it in Arabic, this type of cultural racism, when we go after somebody and then we call them a Toubab when he's black. Or we have, like I talked about last week, we have sisters who are angry because the black man is coming over to Africa. He marries a girl from Ghana. And she says she's a Toubab. When this Ghanaian girl is 2 times darker than the African-American woman who just called her Toubab, she's more African than her. So we have these problems, and we should be very mindful of that, be very careful of that, and we should stop that. So, okay, my brothers and sisters, we will conclude here, and I'll give you the greeting in Afro Asiatic language of Arabic. Salamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.